But I think the big litmus test of someone and whether they believe in your venture is whether they will part with their time and money. So time, sure. And, if people are willing to be an advisor of yours for equity that says they buy in, we have always resisted in both of my ventures having anyone who we take advice from who hasn't invested at minimum time and in almost all cases money into the venture, because it just means they're not as committed. They don't have as much skin in the game. They don't have as much motivation. They're maybe giving you self-interested advice opposed to what's really best for the business.
Jamie, welcome to the show. You are CEO of Loxa, an Insurtech that's looking to build trust and transparency with the market around consumers' most valued assets. You're a second-time founder. You were the founder of React News. We'll get to that in a little bit. You've gone through quite a journey, so I would love for you to start right at the beginning. Why did you become an entrepreneur?
I think partially like a lot of entrepreneurs, I wasn't fit for purpose for corporate employment. I did love my time. I did 10 years with Procter & Gamble, Gartner, Debtwire, which was a debt-focused news service. So I did my time doing that, but I think I always had in the back of my mind I would never be satisfied with my career unless I started something, went all in like you do in Monopoly. And, I knew from a very early stage that I was sort of looking to find the right niche and go for it. I mean, I almost started a pet insurance business 2 years. Oh, sorry, not pet insurance, food and supplies online business 2 years into my career. Really glad I didn't do that. Hugely commoditized market. Did not do enough market research. Probably would have been a disaster. But that itch to start something was always there. And so when I was working at a debt-focused news service and did some research into why there wasn't a real estate focused version of the same, even presented that back to my company at the time, and they weren't especially interested. Thomson Reuters didn't do it, Bloomberg didn't do it, the Financial Times doesn't do a lot of real estate. So there was a clear gap in the market, and I went hard after that. That was the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey.
Amazing. I mean, React News, Europe's largest paid news platform when you exited.
For real estate.
For real estate, yeah. I mean, that's incredible. You did that for a number of years. Well, I did have a question previously. You said Monopoly. Which was your color in Monopoly? I was always light blues.
Ooh, good question. I really liked having the browns when I could get them, and then the purples I think are the best value.
Okay.
So if you can get those, you're going to have the cheapest cost of housing for the return it's going to give you.
This is the best answer ever. You went right at the bottom of the level and right at the high. So you like cheap housing and premium real estate, Mayfair Park Lane and Whitechapel Road and Old Kent Road. Those are the ones you went after.
I just like an ROI and being able to get it done quickly. And the second you have those, you mortgage everything and go all in. And that's kind of how I've done my career as well.
That's awesome. I love it. So you step into React News. I mean, look, you had a good career. You had a nice career, probably quite a cushy career.
Yep.
So making that step, you in your mid-20s at the time? Yeah,
I would have been just turned 30 when I made the final decision to take the plunge.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so you're 30 years of age, and what were your family and loved ones saying when you go, I'm going to leave this nice job and go all in on something which I hope works?
Yeah, it was a bit of madness. Like I was on 150K OTE at the time. And so that was nice. That was paying the bills. I was comfortable. I was, out of debt for the first time in my life. So it would have been a good time to continue on that path. And my parents, while they have helped build what is now a really big business in the hedge fund advisory space, aren't founders themselves. So they didn't really get it. But they were incredibly supportive. They were, it's something I've been talking to them about for a long time. And so they, my uncle in particular, who I went to for sounding out of this, was like, it sounds like you've already made the decision. Like, while I could advise you on this, it sounds like you're really going to regret it if you don't. And so my parents took a very hands-off view and just said, look, lovely that you want to do this. We don't get it. It's not a risk we took. It made a lot of sense to stay in employment in the 80s and 90s while banking was booming and the finance industry was, choosing to pay not only all your expenses, but all of your perks and pay you an enormous salary as well. But if this is something you have to do, go ahead and do it.
Amazing. So plunge made, real estate, news, media, loads of buzzwords that don't associate with Procter and Gamble. So, a lot of people say when going into startups, Jamie, you want to learn an industry. And then once you learn an industry, you can then maybe go start a business in it.
Yep.
I always have a sort of addition to that, say you can also go learn how to build a startup and then maybe choose an industry. Actually, that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
But you did neither of those things. So it's quite a step, and so where do you even start? Did you even know how to, register on Companies House, the business? How was that initial sort of year for you?
Yeah, absolutely terrifying. Completely terrifying. Because I agree. Like, there's this concept of founder market fit, and I have mixed feelings about it, right? So if you know an industry inside out, you know the pain points, you're talking to market participants every day, that is a huge competitive advantage, and that should not be underweighed. And a lot of the time, ironically, I've invested in businesses where I felt there was great founder market fit. Because the problems from inside out. But I think you can overcome that with the right user research. So one thing I've done for both companies I've started now is take the time to go out and talk to a lot of market participants in a structured way, leveraging the learnings from the Mom Test, which is a great book, and making sure these are really wide-ranging product and customer interviews so that you understand the real pain points and whether or not people are going to pay for what you had out there in the market. So for my first startup, we had the huge advantage. I started it with 3 journalists. These journalists, while I didn't have a real estate background, I had some news background, but it actually wasn't what I was working in just before. But these journalists had been talking to market participants every day of their lives for at least the last 8 years in each case. So in terms of their understanding of the market and the products we were creating, they knew it would sell. While I went out and did some user research ourselves, many of those user interviews ended up being our first customers, which is brilliant. I can't recommend user research enough as sort of a Trojan horse to actually make sales. That was sort of my mechanism in both cases for overcoming the fact that I hadn't been working in the real estate industry or now in the insurance or retail industry. I think that is possible. It's more difficult. But I believe that if you find a really good gap in the market and you are confident in that gap and you have enough of a body of evidence that people will pay for your solution, that founder market fit or having been in the industry becomes less important as a founder who can own a part of that startup business, whether that's sales or technical or operations or anything else.
Yeah, awesome. So React News, then give me a few of the numbers, your readership and viewers, and again, how many years did you work on that business?
Yeah. So it was a 4-year end-to-end journey from founding to the eventual exit from Green Street, which was the company that acquired us. So we started with no readers and no revenue. We raised a bit of investment, $300K, which ended up being more than we needed, but we were first-time entrepreneurs. We wanted a cushion. I think the safety aspect was very important to us. The tech build was about $50K. That we all took obviously salary hits. I was on pure commission, as I should have been as the commercial co-founder. And we just grew really fast. I mean, it was something that the market had been looking for. There were other news services in the market, but the journalists who started the venture with me were the best journalists in the market from those other publications. So that was a big competitive advantage. And most of our competition was focused on either the data aspect or events. And so the news was like a secondary product they used to drive people to there, whereas we were a subscription service purely about the news. And it turns out at a relatively affordable rate, that's something people really wanted. The day-to-day news that you can talk about, that you can trade on, that you can leverage as currency with with other market participants. So we were a pure play online news service at a time when the competition had only recently moved online, whereas so we were able to be a lot more agile. So I can't speak to the current readership. I know the news service has done incredibly well under Green Street, the new owners. It's been rebranded as Green Street News. The journalists are still with that publication, and the editorial team has expanded massively. From memory, when I left, I think we had about 30,000 paying subscribers. I can't say too much, but we were in several millions of revenue when we exited.
This episode is sponsored by Opus. Opus brings entrepreneurs together to create opportunity through power of connection. Opus is a curated community for business builders who understand that relationships are the backbone of business and success. If you are an entrepreneur, founder, business builder, laser focused on a mission, Opus could be for you too. To find out more, go to joinopus.org. Now back to the show. Amazing and incredible. I mean, what an amazing journey. First time entrepreneur, you turned 30, very young, very green, and then you sold to Green Street. Nice little synergy there. So why did you exit? I mean, okay, I'm sure everyone in the audience is going, oh, well, obviously James, he wanted the monetary aspect of it. But yeah, there's always that trigger or thought process. Was it you wanted to go do something else, or yeah, what was your reasonings?
It was a tough decision, and it took a lot of debate on the side of the directors, because on one hand we had this great opportunity to go and grow bigger and look at European expansion ourselves. But I guess at the end of the day, there were a few things that convinced us. One was the money, transparently. There was a lot of money on the table, and we knew that it was going to be life-changing, and that would be set us up nicely for everything else we wanted to do in life. So that was a factor. We also had great synergies with the company that acquired us. So we really liked their values. We really liked all the people we met. We really liked that they would invest, and they'd just acquired a new service in the US as well. And that had gone incredibly well for them. The journalists there were treated incredibly well, and it really helped to build their business. So we felt that, and especially given we were first-time founders and we didn't necessarily have the expertise to scale internationally and understand everything that would be involved there, or to look at M&A. So we just felt like joining that company, from my perspective, learning a lot more about the M&A and commercial sides and international expansion would be hugely valuable. There'd be a lot of learnings to have there, and we'd just have not infinite capital, but a huge amount of capital behind us to make sure that what was then React News would become the preeminent publication in European real estate, which it has.
Yeah, that's amazing. Let's talk about sales then. You mentioned then, you were when you were in the ramen days, as we call them, right? Yeah. You were commission only. You were not taking salary. I mean, that must be a tricky one when you knew that 6 months before you were earning good cash.
Yeah.
But you mentioned another thing as well, the mum test book. I should have that book, by the way, on the shelf here.
It's a must read.
Talking about books, you've wrote a book.
I have.
You've wrote the book on sales. So how did that sales go? And I guess also, what's the advice to a young entrepreneur, maybe first-time entrepreneur, and maybe not done that much of sales, and even if they have done, a lot of commercial sales, doing it for yourself and doing it in a new market with finding product market fit as you go, all of these things, everyone's going, yep, I know exactly what that's like. What's your advice? How do you make it happen?
Yeah, it's tough. It's the hardest thing to do, especially when you have an early stage product or no product at all. How do you get meetings with people? How do you get people to take you seriously? I would say that mum test, that user research, is a big part of that, because those are materially sales calls. I mean, they're great because they're low pressure sales calls. You're structuring it in a way where you just understand people's problems. You ideally are talking 20% or less of the time. So it really is an interview, much like us talking now, right? So people love to talk, and people love to talk about themselves, and people love to talk about their business. So you're giving them that opportunity. And ultimately, those user research you do, if things break the way that you want to and you create the product that fits their needs, will become your early stage customers. So first advice is get out there and do loads of user research interviews. They are sales calls. They are brilliant. They are structured in a non-threatening way that gives you loads of information that you can come back to later. And then as the commercial co-founder, if that is your role within the business, you have to be willing to cold call. I just think there's no way around it. Unless you have berserk product market fit so that your product markets itself, which to some extent we did with the news, because people could see the news and we had loads and loads of inbound leads.
Sure.
But ultimately, you are going to have to make sacrifices and pick up the phone. I'm still doing that 2.5 years into this venture. Like after this, I will be going to go make some cold calls to primarily tool retailers who we want to help offer insurance in the future. So getting over that hump of, you're going to have to find numbers using LinkedIn plugins or prospecting services or however you find them, you're going to have to pick up the phone. You're going to have to make people talk to you seriously. And my belief is email marketing is dead. LinkedIn marketing is challenging, but you'll still get some responses, but no more. The only way to have an organic conversation nowadays, unless you reach out in hyper-personalized, long-form emails that's targeted, is to pick up the phone. And so I would advise anyone in the B2B space who's starting a business, like if you have any hang-ups around cold calling, you're going to need to get over them, because that's the only way you can achieve the sales velocity you need to and the level of feedback you need to in an early stage product.
Absolutely love it. And great advice. As you say, if you're not willing to put yourself out there, it doesn't just go with social media or whatever. It's picking up the phone. Yeah. Let's move on, Tim. Loxa, or Bolt Cover was the original name of the business. You've recently rebranded. I'd love to talk about that in a second. I love rebrands. I'm a marketeer. We love rebrands. Maybe some bit too much. But Bolt Cover, come Loxa today. Tell me about that in your own words. And I think we'd love to talk about, everyone in the audience wants to know, wow, you've made an exit. You've got cash back in the bank account and everything else. So there's got to be quite a large incentive to go back down the ramen route. But yeah, let's talk to us about Loxa first.
Sure. Yeah. So Loxa, as you mentioned, and Insurtech, we basically the way we came about Loxa was myself and my business partner Tori, who I worked with at React News and then Green Street. So I knew she was a great cultural fit and has a lot of strengths which work well with mine. We went out and shortlisted 50 business ideas and sort of like in the book 0 to 1. The aim was to create 10 pitch decks from those 50 of our favorite ideas and take them out to market and get research. But this was just one. We ended up on 7, and this was one that moved fast, that had a huge opportunity, that was really exciting, that had a level of complexity that React News didn't, in that, this is arguably a 4-sided marketplace. You need retailers, you need claim handlers, you need insurers, and you need the end customer, and you need all of that to work in a technological infrastructure. So it's complicated business. I kind of wanted to do something complex and really high upside that had unicorn potential. So that's really what separated this idea from the rest. I do sometimes regret that complexity. It is a really complicated business, but that problem solving at a really complex level, using tech, connecting a marketplace, has been really, really satisfying when we've got it right. You're right, we've rebranded. One piece of advice I'd have is be very careful with your name. You don't want to rebrand if you don't have to. We had to. While I'm thrilled with the new branding and the new name, and
looks great, looks really good.
Thank you.
Looks lovely.
We're looking forward to making Loxa a verb, meaning to include product protection with a product. I think we've done the rebrand the exact way. It is painful to change names and horses and GitHub URLs and all that midstream. So I would take the extra time as a founder to choose your name carefully and to make sure every base is covered in terms of your IP.
So I assume you had challenges with other businesses that also had the keywords Bolt and Cover in them, which led you to a rebrand. Only a year and a half or so in, probably, when those conversations started to happen begrudgingly for you. But how have the first couple of years gone?
So it took us a year to build, which was longer than we started. And the big gap with that was finding insurance capacity. So insurers need to back us for us to be able to distribute in the market. And I would say about 5 years ago, this business just wouldn't have been possible, especially from founders from outside insurance. So we had some great advisors, like our 2 lead investors. The largest, Ross and Zara Hood, has recently exited a insurance business himself. And we've had some great advice from people like Ed Gaze, who helped us get our initial insurance regulation, our appointed representative status. But it was a hard hustle and took 6 months to find capacity. Like, I remember going to see another insurance broker / underwriter about capacity, and he was sort of quite red in the face, I think, from the night before, and he described his night out before and called himself Mr. Bollinger, and then sort of said after a while, "No, I don't think we'll be giving you guys insurance capacity, but I'd sort of love you to take me out to lunch," which is very the way in the insurance industry used to be. So I think that encapsulates some of the difficulty we had as outsiders. None of our founding team actually drink, so that's a bit of a a barrier compared to the stereotype of how insurance used to be. But the good news is insurance capacity providers are now looking for new innovative ways to market and willing to back early stage insurtechs like ourselves, which is really exciting. So we've got a panel of 3 really high rated, really collaborative insurers that we work with on a variety of schemes. So that took 6 months. The next year was still building the tech, finding our first retailers, doing those research interviews. We did 30 research interviews. I think 50 of those end up being clients of ours, and then building the retailer base. So over the last year, we have built a solid base. We're currently active with 30 retailers. We now need to expand to enterprise and to really big retailers, but we do have a good number in our pipeline. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, sounds super interesting. And what I love about this is you seem to be taking your time. You're like, with React News, you just went and did it.
Yeah.
And I guess it's because of the complexities and other things. What I'd love to dig into is what you're talking about there, advisors and investors. Let's start with, let's just start across the board. Advisors, investors, anyone that's going to be involved in your business. How do you find that fit? I personally think one of the biggest hacks you can find as a startup founder is get a really good advisory board or set of advisors that can help you along the journey. Find your gaps, and if you can identify those gaps, that's quite a hard skill in itself, but a very important one. You said yourself there, you've got a couple of really, really high quality, highly impactful advisors.
Yep.
I don't know if you had them for your previous business from an advisory point of view, but what was your advice to a startup founder today, day 100 or even day 10, to find like the right advisors? Because taking the wrong advice in input, know, if you're inputting the wrong advice, that could be detrimental to your business.
Yeah. I think especially when you're like us and you're from outside of the industry that you are entering, having those advisors, and by advisors, I really mean investors. Ultimately, if someone is potentially in time, yes, I'd say we had some advisors that have become investors. But I think the big litmus test of someone and whether they believe in your venture is whether they will part with their time and money. So time, sure, and if people are willing to be an advisor of yours for equity that says they buy in, we have always resisted in both of my ventures having anyone who we take advice from who hasn't invested at minimum time and in almost all cases money into the venture, because it just means they're not as committed. They don't have as much skin in the game. They don't have as much motivation. They're maybe giving you self-interested advice opposed to what's really best for the business. So I would say go and find those people who believe in you and what you're doing enough that they will part with capital, and those are your best possible advisors, especially if they're industry relevant to what you're working in. So our best advisors and investors have been people from the insurance background that have also made capacity introduction. A couple of our insurers we now work with came through our investors, or people in the retail world. We've had a couple of our customers invest into our business, which is a really heartening sign. And those people have made loads of introductions. So those are the biggest value add. People who are in your industry, who believe in you, who back you, who are willing to part with cash so that they're invested. And wherever possible, I'd try and insist on that being a condition of someone who wants to join your advisory panel and be along for the ride.
There's so many themes to your journey which lead into how you structured your funding round for Loxa, and I think everything around personal connections, the user research. I believe you did some door-to-door sales in between these two businesses. That one-on-one connections that then leverage not just them departing with their cash and investing in you as a person, you as a business and a team, but also the doors that they then do open. You have over 60 angels on your cap table for your round at Loxa, which we're allowed to talk about the amount, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was over $1.5 million that you raised. With that amount of angels, there's so many questions I have around this, but let's just start with, why did you go down that route? You could have gone VC, you could have gone bigger tickets, lower amount of people to manage. I think anyone who's got investment will be going, wow, like that's a lot of people to manage. And those that may have not got investment, every single one of those 66 wants updates. Yeah. They want to know what's going on in the business. Yep. They may request time of you. Sure. And reality is, you need to give it to them because within reason, because they've departed with their cash. So why did you go for that amount of angels? Because I know that you had the choice to go for less. Yep. So yeah, why did you choose that route?
We have had a couple of fund offers, but the terms of those fund offers didn't work for us. So part of it was not coming to terms that we would accept from venture capital or otherwise. The other huge advantage of angels in general is that my experience of raising from angels, and perhaps that's because we've been quite clear with the type of angels we want up front, and that we're looking for people in the insurance or retail space who can add value. We have taken capital from everyone from friends and family to non-strategic investors, and that's of course fine. But the people who we really wanted to invest have also become our advisors and helped us in material ways. So angels are great. Angels are the best possible investors. They're mission aligned. They have an emotional involvement as well as just a capital. They don't go through as much due diligence because it just doesn't make sense given the ticket size. They're really betting on you as a person, and the processes are much quicker, and they give you much more freedom to run your business. Right? You're never going to have valuation preferences or a requirement to have someone on the board, although we do have a couple of our investors on the board because they add so much value in those regard from a tech and legal and insurance perspective. So once we decided to go all angels and decided that funds weren't the right route to us because of the terms we were being offered and the business stage we were at, and the relatively conservative view of VCs in Europe, we just went hard after getting as many value-add angels as possible, with the view that even if some are a little bit more activist than you might like, or make a few inquiries, which is actually not what we found. We have a fantastic group of angels. That the benefit that having 66 well-connected, interested people on your cap table is well beyond that. So yes, we had to have 400 meetings to do that. The fundraise took 9 months. We listed on various platforms. We paid some introducer fees for some of those angels. But ultimately, the balance we have now of having people who are really interested and invested in the business without needing any specific control or requirements is hugely value add. And so I would recommend that founders raise from angels whenever possible. Obviously, depending on how much capital you need to run your business and how fast you need to move. But angels, in my mind, are the best possible investors. And I'm really, really happy and proud that we have 66 of them.
That's awesome. The complexity into getting 66 angels into the cap table, I don't envy you on that one, but an impressive feat. And I'm sure that will be very beneficial to you. And also, there's SEIS, EIS schemes as well, which are very beneficial to those angels as well, which is one of the best schemes we have in this country.
It's amazing.
Despite what people say about some startup funding and grants and things that you can get, that is one of the better ones for sure.
Oh, it's incredible. It de-risks hugely. I think something like 2/3 of our angels have benefited from SEIS and EIS, and it just makes it a lower risk decision for them and makes their investment more fun. I'm also an angel investor myself, right? I have a portfolio of 25 startups, of which I think somewhere around 15 will have been SEIS or EIS eligible. So now I'm not as active because I haven't taken any income for the last couple of years. But it's a wonderful scheme, and it means that people can feel a lot more confident taking high upside risk, which is the kind of people you want in your cap table at an early stage business.
Yeah, 100%. Talk about the team then. You've got a great team at Loxa, and you had a great team in your past business as well. One of those was Tori, who is the co-founder of Loxa with yourself. Obviously, you had a great relationship. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing this with her as well. Yeah. But moving from one business to another, the roles might adapt a little bit and they may change, and it's a different business. It has its own complexities. How do you manage sort of co-founder relationships as they sort of pursue one venture than the next, especially after a great win for both of you, I'm sure, going into that second venture and going, let's go again. Like, how has that been? And also, co-founder versus solo founder, did you have an opinion on that?
I have a really strong opinion on co-founders, yes. I tend to invest in businesses with multiple founders. Not universally, but in my mind, it gives the business a much better chance of success. I believe the statistics show that as well. Like, the majority of successful businesses are co-founders. It's a very lonely job, so sharing it with someone, having someone who you can rant to, which is not your employees, is hugely valuable. And when you can get people in with complementary skill sets, that is an amazing thing. And complementary personality types, where you can do that in a way where it's complementary enough that people can get on. and keep focused on the fact that the business is the number one priority, and that's what you're working to, absolutely. And you need to take personality out of it whenever possible. So I'd highly recommend people find co-founders. The challenge is that you need to make sure that people are aligned, and there are a couple of ways of doing that. One is just know the person inside and out, spend the time, have a trial run. And Tori and I had worked together before. Richie, who we brought on as a third co-founder, as a technical co-founder, we had been working with his agency for a couple of months, and then he turned around and said, hey, what if we did some of the payment in equity? And then we ended up having negotiations, and he became a fully fledged co-founder, a member of the board, and was operational in the business for a couple of years until recently, when we've hired a full-time CTO. So those models can work incredibly well, but make sure you try before you buy. Ideally, like any employee, that's why there's notice periods and things like that. And also vesting schedules, super important. You don't want to just give anyone equity in your company when they can walk away with it, because that's so damaging to the cap table and to investor confidence. And so we've had a commercial co-founder who left the business, not necessarily for performance reasons, it just wasn't quite culturally working out. And that person left with less than a year of their vesting, right? So while that is a couple of points of debt equity on the cap table, it's not hamstringing. Right, and then you're able to part ways in an amicable way, saying, you've earned this much equity, but you haven't earned the rest, and therefore let's work out something that works for both sides. So making sure you have the documentation in place. I mean, contracts are only ever relevant when things are going really well or really badly, right? So you just got to make sure your bases are covered in that place, that it's a fair equity split when there's a big exit, when there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and that in that downside, in that worst case scenario, you're covered so that a co-founder leaving, if that does have to happen, and it happens in a crazy amount of businesses, like almost half of businesses have a co-founder leave at some point, right? And 65% of startup failures are because of co-founder fallout. My girlfriend's actually going into co-founder therapy, so these statistics are very relevant in my mind at the moment. But the odds are you will have some kind of co-founder format. Just make sure you have the contractual protection for the business so that those can be worked out amicably.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's such an interesting one, because especially if you know that person, I think it becomes so much harder to get the contracts right.
Completely.
If you don't know the person, and you may say, look, well, let's do this for 6 months and see how it goes. It's a lot easier to be a bit colder about it.
Yeah.
But so many people, I mean, gosh, they go into business with their spouse, with family members, with best friends. I mean, look, I'm not one to speak. My co-founder is one of my best friends of 12, 13 years now. So it is really challenging to go, hey, you've got a family, I've got a family. This is what we need to do to make sure we're both covered and it's fair.
Yeah.
But you also both need to make sure that you're both happy. So then it can just be put in that drawer.
Yeah.
For hopefully one day the pot of gold.
Exactly.
And not the other option.
Yeah.
But yeah, it needs to get right. And I think anyone who is going into this, and depending on what level of cash input you have at the start, you may want to just spend a bit of cash with some legal advice just to get those contracts nailed on. There's so many great boilerplates out there, but there's always a bit of doubt in the back of your mind that you might not get them perfect. So I would always advise people to go and just get that bit of legal advice, legal support. It might cost you a bit of money, but down the line, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, it's going to be very beneficial that you spend that cash at the start for both ways. Hopefully it's good, and then that cash gets washed out and no one cares.
Yeah, look, I think that if you want to do something really tailored, like I did look at, we looked at a lot of different options for starting a business after React News, and one of them would have had 8 co-founders and required a hugely tailored contract. We really didn't. I mean, look, Tori's been a friend of mine for ages. I trust her absolutely. We've never really had co-founder conflict, and that's been brilliant. It's lucky, but we kind of knew we wouldn't. But we're still both on 4-year vesting schedules because that's just sensible. I think the seed legal templates are fine. I really do. I'm a big believer in that as a service, and I think it's airtight enough that it'll hold up. But yeah, if you want to do something particularly bespoke, I think maybe the more important thing is go find some entrepreneurs who would do it and can advise you and maybe even arbitrate what would be a fair equity split. It's funny, I was listening to Harry Stebbins' podcast a couple of weeks ago, and they talked about how in VC, a 50-50 split is a red flag. Why? You just haven't thought that through properly. There's no way two founders are equally valuable. So a 50-50 split is frankly just a little bit lazy, because someone's inevitably going to put a bit more time, more money, more value, more connections. And so getting that equity split right at first based on the value that someone's bringing, and making sure that they stay in the business to continue bringing that investment so that there's no significant dead equity based on what that person can contribute and provide, both in time, money, value, connections, expertise, whatever it may be, is absolutely essential.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And Anthony Rose, a previous guest of the show, will be absolutely excited to hear that you're recommending Seed Legals. So yeah, obviously anyone in the audience that hasn't listened to that episode, go do that. Quick plug. But also, yeah, check out Seed Legals. I mean, they've just expanded into the US with great success. So hopefully they grow really significantly there. I'm sure they're pushing that really hard.
The Delaware Flip as a service is genius.
Yeah,
genius.
Big believer of content, Anthony, as well. So he's a man after my own heart. The team then, so you had a team obviously in your past business, you've worked as a team member, a manager, etc. in the past as well. So moving into Loxa, you've got to build out, your new A team, right? You know, you had an A team.
Yep.
That's how you got to the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Now you're building out that dream team again. Has there ever been sort of mistakes that you've made where you've just gone, oh geez, I that was not a good choice? Or where's the advice to someone who is going to hire, maybe around that fundraising point where they just have to hire to get to the next stage?
Sure.
And they're going from 2-3 people to 7 or 8, or they're going from 10 to 30 people. Where do you think is the sort of place that people fall down the quickest?
Yeah. I mean, I think I have 3 main points around this. One is the typical hire slow, fire fast. And if you're trying to hire for an immediate need, you can't always hire slow. But then take the probation period super seriously, and have really strong KPIs. And if you're 50-50 at the end of that probation period, probably don't pass the person. I know that sounds super harsh, but if you have any doubts at the end of probation, the first 20 people you let into your business need to be A players. And so if you think that person's, a B minus, take the probation super seriously, because the interview is never going to be enough time for you to properly trial and understand what that person's actually like and what they're actually going to deliver to business. Probation period is. And once you've made that decision, fire fast. So we've let people go halfway through the probation period a couple of times. We just knew it wasn't going to work. And the second there's that much doubt and the directors agree, do it then and there. Don't beat around. Don't keep them in the business for convenience. No, they're not one of your 20A players who are going to take this venture to the moon. Second point I have, personality test. That will tell you so much more than any individual subjective interview.
Okay, any specific, when you say personality test, we talking Myers-Briggs? Are you saying go out and actually pay for a personality test? Or are you just saying personality test as in, are they a fit in sort of the senior, like yourself and Tori's opinions, are they a personality fit for the business? Do you expand on that a little bit?
Definitely objective personality tests. So we use something called Tech, which is a great tool, relatively inexpensive for a business like ours, that gives us a good objective evaluation of whether this person's motivations, values, IQ are the right fit for the business. You're asking someone to take between a 60 to 90-minute test, which is a nice proof of their willingness to commit to the business, in addition to more technical tests if you're hiring technical people. But I would rather people spend time on that than sitting down with my co-founder and I and saying, do we like you? I mean, of course we do that. We do at least 2 subjective interviews just to make sure the person is who they say they are and can turn up and, isn't going to talk too much or too little or whatever the problem might be. But the majority, we heavily weight personality tests, because if you read like Thinking Fast and Slow, any sort of objective measure is statistically better than the subjective test that you put through. And you're never going to see what that person's subjectively like from an interview where someone's performing, particularly salespeople, versus what they're actually like in terms of their hard work and their day-to-day. And so make personality testing of some sort. And we've used SHL tests, which are relatively expensive. We've moved to Tech because we think that's a more cost-effective option to make a big part of their evaluation, then evaluate them in their probation really, really carefully.
Yeah, love it. You talk about total ownership as a sort of core value of the business. And also, I think I saw on LinkedIn, actually, that you host investor updates via barbecue.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we are in the UK,
Yeah.
so you probably can't do too many of those. So maybe that's a very tactical choice. But let's start with the total ownership from a cultural standpoint,
Yeah.
from a value standpoint. Maybe explain what you believe total ownership is and how you sort of embed that into the business and the people within.
So I think it's essential when you're at this stage of business that people completely own their tasks and find a way to. I think that's been the biggest red flag for us when we've hired someone and let them go in probation. It's that they weren't owning and following through their tasks, because you can't have to be checking in on people. You can't be doing other people's jobs, which actually brings me the third point I was going to make around hiring is when you hire. I'm reading a great book right now called Buy Back Your Time. I can't remember who wrote it, but I'll come back. That what that says is hire for freeing up your time rather than hiring for a specific role or purpose. Because no one will ever be as committed to your business as you are. But realistically, like, you just can't expect that level of commitment from anyone who's not a co-founder. No one else is going to work the 70, 80-hour weeks that you're willing to, because you're so invested personally, professionally, financially in the venture. So what you need to ask yourself is, what am I spending time on that I'm not good at or not enjoying, and hire that person. So then you need that person to own it, because you need to bring in people who are better than you at that. Like, I'm not a marketeer. I don't think I'm particularly good at marketing. I'm told I have terrible design skills by my co-founder. I'm banned from being involved in design of any sort. I had nothing to do with the rebrand. So if we're going to bring in someone to free up my time or Tori's time that could be spent on design, they better be amazing design. They better be telling us what to do. So that's really where total ownership comes in. So we want to spend no time on that so that Tori can spend time on partnerships and marketing and ops, which she's amazing at, and I can spend time on networking, on sales, on developing commercial relationships with our insurers, and the stuff that is the real value add stuff that my theoretical pay grade, which is obviously all based on equity rather than income, justifies.
Yeah, love it. Sweet. Look, you're a sales guy.
Yeah.
You're commercially led. You're the commercial co-founder again, times two.
Yep.
Let's talk sales then. So I know that you know, or that you believe, that cold email is dead. It's gone.
We certainly haven't seen great results from it in this business.
What are you doing to get in front of the right people at Loxa?
Well, myself and Sean on my team average 30 cold calls each day. So that's, and obviously there's a hugely tailored to the retailers that we're in. That's not a huge amount, but they are heavily researched, tailored cold calls that have good outcomes. We are doing more industry-specific PR and trade shows, which are, a lot of retailers have more physical presence than they do online presence. And so that's really the only way to reach them is by that in person. And we're making sure we go up to physically meet all of the retailers we really want to do business with, because that just makes it so much more likely. So it's putting yourself out there, doing the things you don't want to do to reach people, which for me will always include cold calls. I'll never love it, but I'll make myself do it for the rest of my career, or until I can hire someone to do that, and free up my time to do other stuff. But that's not going to be the case for the next year in Loxa, so I will continue turning up each and every day and making those calls, and then just making sure that you spend the time, especially in something like retail, and they say retail is detail, to do things properly and make sure that these relationships which you build can be truly long-term relationships when you're trying to work with a retail partner or a customer for years and years and years. Epic.
So after React News, you could genuinely have retired, and lived your life out on the golf course, or on a beach somewhere. Instead, you went back into startup life, trying to figure out one of the most complex industries, traditional industries, slow-moving industries. I'll keep trying to make it sound more dramatic as I go. What's the advice you'd give to yourself? Look, I know you're 2 years in, you've got a long journey ahead of you, which you're going to absolutely smash, I have no doubt.
Yeah.
But what's the piece of advice, day one of going, Tori, this is, I agree, let's go do this.
Yeah.
What's the advice you'd give to yourself?
Wow. The advice I'd give myself 2.5 years ago would be I think we could have done even more user research, and with more of our ICP, I think at the beginning of this, we thought that we could integrate a bunch of very small retailers and that would be good enough to have a viable business. It turns out we need to integrate much larger retailers for that to be the case. So find a way to spend more time with those retailers and do proper research interviews. We did a few, and we had like a research interview with Qubits, research interview with Shark Ninja. Those were probably our most productive research interviews. We should have done more at that level just to verify the concept. You can never do as much user interviews. In fact, we're starting a new campaign of user research right now, led by George, our product and compliance manager, because they're just so valuable. Not only do they give you the insights, again, those are your most likely customers. So never lose sight of that. Keep talking to your customers and do that the whole way through. So we had a burst of user research, then we went and built our business, and that took a year, and we didn't do enough user research throughout that process, which really, I think, has set us back. So focus externally, know your customers, talk to your customers, find a way to get in front of your customers, let your customers talk, have a 20% talk ratio, and then they will love you and you'll do business.
Epic. I love it. And then what if, I guess, I love the question again. So you're reflecting on your sort of second startup, and let's reflect on the first one as well. If somebody who's out there right now, maybe listening to this, or maybe they just started their journey and they're 30 or 25 or 45 or 55, whatever sort of stage they're at in life, and they're just going on the journey, and they may be intimidated by AI, or they may be just going after something they think is still a problem today, or whatever it is that they've got that courage and they're stepping into it. What's sort of the advice you'd give to them to sort of succeed, giving themselves the best chance of succeeding in any industry?
I think surrounding yourself with people who can be a personal advisory board, ideally, again, investors or employees or co-founders, but at minimum, people who can who are willing to have effectively research interviews with you about your entrepreneurship, and then relentless customer focus, relentless getting out there and talking to people, because your business will evolve and change. And the great thing about starting a business is you will pivot. Like Loxa was originally going to be a pet insurance business. Then we ran into a fellow entrepreneur of mine called Pavel, who's had already started an amazing pet insurance business. But his business pivoted into a claims business, and our business pivoted into this kind of product protection based on what we learned. So don't be too wedded to the initial idea. Do user research, which tells you what and market research, which is amazing to do via AI now. Of course, the customer research still needs to be in person and personable, and that's a huge differentiator, actually doing that work. But the market research is easy with AI. So take your time. Don't be too wedded to the original idea. Be willing to pivot. The expectations when early stage investors invest in a business is that they're investing in you and your ability to operate and your ability to pivot and your ability to find the right idea. They're not necessarily investing in the business idea. And actually, if people are too obsessed with the business idea and they ask you for 4 rounds of calls as an angel investor, probably not the right fit for you, because they're too obsessed with the business idea, which means that they're not trusting you, because you will pivot. I mean, we're live now in tools, furniture, bikes, and glasses. Of those, only bikes was a category we originally thought we would go into. We thought we'd be an electronics heavy business, which we are launching next quarter. We thought we might do jewelry, which again, we haven't launched, but we are going to launch soon. We thought those would be our first categories, but this is the way it ended up panning out, and it's going well. So be willing to pivot and be flexible based on what the market and your users are telling you, because that will give you the best chance of success.
It's a great answer. And right at the end there, I don't want anyone to miss that absolutely nugget of information. Don't just pivot for pivot's sake. Look at the market, talk to your consumers, talk to your customers, peers, anyone who has influence on the purchase decision of your product or service. Yeah. Respond to that. Don't just get one data point, get 2, 3, 5, 10, 100, and then pivot with speed, but with effective data. Because I think a lot of people, one thing you don't want to do is just constantly swap and change. And I think, we both know the magpie syndrome of seeing new things that are nice and shiny and going off in that direction. So it's a great answer. And I think, you've got plenty of nuggets in there. Let's talk to the future then. Loxa, a couple of years in, I know that you're in this to really, really go after a traditional market with a bunch of incumbents, and you're bringing the new wave of insurance in this space. So what are you looking to achieve? What do the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years look like?
Well, I think I should start, James, by saying I am 100% committed, and I can prove it. I've gotten tattoos here of all my companies.
Oh, wow.
So just taking this off to show on my arm here.
Just in case anyone
yeah.
is on, just in case anyone is on Spotify or any audio platform and wondering what the rustling is on the microphones, Jamie has just taken off his jacket, which is the first guest that's ever stripped on this show. He's wearing
I'll stop now if you. But I'm open-minded.
He's wearing his shirt below, and he's got a lovely 3 company logo on his forearm with the 3 businesses that he's worked on, which includes React News, Bolt Cover, which has been rebranded to Loxa. That's awesome. That's absolutely epic. So yes,
if you are going to
committed.
go ahead with this idea, I do not recommend rebrands, but it's a commitment that both Tori and I made. We both have Bolt Cover and Loxa tattoos. That it's just a way of representing how all in we are. So the future for Loxa, to answer the question, is we want to really redefine how retailers offer product protection. And fundamentally, we believe that the retailers that will win in the market are the most customer-focused retailers in this new world where, firstly, there's a bigger wage gap and economic turmoil coming than has ever happened before. I mean, you're already seeing 10% of consumers in the UK have no savings at all. 21% have less than £1,000. So if you're buying £1,000 couch or a £2,000 bike or a £500 bike, that is a significant purchase for people that requires protection. And we believe that the retailers who want to win in the market should be helping to offer that protection for a few reasons. One is it's a differentiator. John Lewis has been doing a version of this for ages, including a level of protection that extends well past the warranty with a number of products, which make them a preferred retailer. But the idea of providing insurance against theft with bikes, or power tools, or protection of furniture where you can have a repair technician coming to repair your upholstery or a red wine stain or a pet-related stain the next day. These are such value-add services that we hope they will become the norm in the industry, and the most customer-focused retailers will provide them. So we're dedicated to building a version of product protection which is fairer and more transparent and more customer friendly than it's ever existed before, and working with our retailer partners to provide a holistic protection for their product that serves consumers in a way that it never has before.
Awesome. I would say the majority of people, when they think of insurance, they have a situation that they are going to have a claim.
Yeah.
They think twice, thrice, and on.
Yeah.
And most of it probably always comes down to they're going to try and find a way out of this.
Yeah.
There's somewhere in the T's and C's, and they may not even try, which is a scary thought considering how much people need it. That's why they got the insurance in the first place.
Yeah.
So maybe they will try, and then they'll have one bad experience, and then it goes on from there, a bit of a snowball effect. Loxa, you will have T's and C's in everything you do. And they'll be at length, and they'll be depthy, and they'll be wordy because, frankly, they can't not be to a point. How do you highlight the key bits to your consumers, the people trusting you to be trustworthy and authentic in a day and age where it's significantly far and few between, it feels like? So where are you different?
So yeah, we've put a lot of effort and time with our insurers into making our policies claimable and transparent and easy to access and easy to understand. So when you purchase our product online or in store, it's very clear what the T's and C's are. We do a lot of staff training to make sure that's the case. We have pop-ups and pop-downs online that show exactly what is and isn't included. But we have just mainly put a lot of effort and sometimes chosen to be higher priced as a result to make sure what you think is covered is covered. So, for example, on our tool scheme, we went out in the market and we evaluated all of the different policies that are out there. And there are some crazy stuff in the T's and C's for some of these. There are versions of tool theft where if you have left your tools in a van, the most common place where tools are stolen from, 28% of tool theft is from a van, then it needs to be parked under a street light. you need to be able to prove that, which I think is a crazy condition, partially because a lot of councils no longer keep their streetlights on at night. That would annul your insurance. So we've designed ours intentionally and upped our prices with our insurer to make sure there's no depreciation. This happens all the time when like older tools, like they will only pay you a percentage of it. We've said we will always do new for old. Wherever possible, we avoid any excess, because, in all of our policies we distribute through retailers, we currently have no excess. So you can claim on it. You'd rather do that in your home insurance because it won't have an excess. It won't affect any other insurance and your premiums the next year. And we are very clear on what is and is covered, and we don't require anything onerous other than the requisite proof. So, for example, on our eyewear, we cover theft. We cover theft on glasses and sunglasses. You need a crime reference number and a receipt. So you can, we are trusting people to be honest that their glasses were stolen, and to, be willing to go through getting a police report to get that.
Which is quite a rigmarole.
Yeah.
Like, if nothing else, it's a time commitment. And as you say, I was going to ask you, what about the other way? If you go too generous or too transparent, I'd say, most people are good.
Yeah.
Right? We know that.
Yeah.
We hope that. And most people are just good. I mean, that's the only way we hope society continues to function. But
Absolutely.
But what happens about the ones which may be maybe in a tough spot, or XYZ, and they need the cash, or they maybe take advantage? So
yeah, it's always possible. And our tool scheme requires like proof of forced entry, crime reference number, proof of original purchase. Like, these aren't crazy barriers to overcome. Now, the reality of any consumer-facing insurance is there will be bad actors. We don't want that. We obviously put some protections in place so that is not the case, or at minimum it's difficult. And luckily we work with claims handlers who have really good fraud protection for AI. So AI modifications are detected, things like that. Great. That will minimize the bad actors. Ultimately, if there are bad actors, we need to put the price of our insurance, because the price of our insurance is based on the claims ratio and how much our insurers need to pay out. And that's just the reality. So if there are more bad actors, then insurance will cost more, and that doesn't help anyone. So we are betting on humanity generally being good, which luckily you and I share that view.
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully everyone's good. No, I absolutely love that. Let's look. I love to get people to reflect on this, because, I think one thing founders, I mean, you're probably testament to this. One thing founders, including probably yourself and myself, are really bad at is taking a step back and appreciating the how well you've done, or some of the success you've had. Now, you have quite a clear success in your past business, and the cash in the bank to show it, and the news article to show it, and the credit there. Throughout your journey, and maybe look to others that in the industry, and you'll have peers that are founders, and you know the audience of this show is very much around early stage founders, and those looking to build their next pot of gold, or they're looking after a certain thing that they're going after. When you're looking back at that for yourself and others, do you think it's more important to be lucky or to have skill during that journey to be successful?
I think it's more important to be lucky, but I also think you create your own luck, right? So even if you're thinking about starting a business, the work that you do on yourself now will increase the surface area of your luck. The networking events you go to will increase the surface area of your luck. Just a brief anecdote, like getting into the real estate news arena, which was not necessarily what I planned to do, and sort of came about, like I had heard about this, I thought there might be a gap in the market, and was curious why more services weren't providing high-end real estate news in the same vein as there were amazing debt and M&A news services at the time. And so I called a journalist in the real estate industry to get his point of view, and he was the name that came up the most. And I called him, and he was on the beach in Thailand, having recently retired. And so he said, I'm out of the game, not that interested in doing it. I do some like freelance stuff, but I've really, committed to my lifestyle here in Thailand, and I'm going to have a great time doing that. But here's who you should speak to. And the person he recommended was a gent called James Buckley, who became my business partner. So complete coincidence, like networking. And it turns out James was one of the single best London-based or London-focused real estate journalist. Like, just no competition. But I didn't know that at the time. It was just I had increased the service area of my luck by making a call that I was nervous about and didn't know much about to someone. And then you have a huge amount of imposter syndrome, and you just need to work through that. So you will need to get lucky, but the work you do on yourself in terms of understanding, research, and the positions you put yourself in terms of putting yourself out there and asking for what you want, will increase your service luck to the point where you have a chance to get lucky, which will always trump, in my mind, any level of skill.
Amazing and great answer. I love the nuances of that. Great story as well. Jamie, where can people find you if they want to follow on your journey?
I'm not a big social media person other than LinkedIn, which I find incredibly helpful. About 10% of our last round came from inbound leads from LinkedIn. So I try and make those posts personal and about the team and about others whenever possible. So probably the easiest way is to follow me on LinkedIn and message me there if you do want to get in contact.
Amazing.
For a specific reason.
I'll put those links down in the description. But yeah, just type in Jamie and Loxa and you'll find you along the way. Jamie, thank you so much. You have been my everyday founder.
Oh, thanks, James.